What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Gerald here with your weather forecast. So we're all having a wonderful start to the week on this Monday, and I hope everyone has a great week ahead. But first, we have to get through this nor'easter on the way, and let me tell you, it's already really beginning to crank up and beginning to organize, and I think going into tonight and tomorrow, we're going to get quite the doozy of a storm for a lot of us throughout the Northeast. So obviously, we're going to talk a lot about that in today's video. We're also going to discuss some cold air that's on the way following this thing, as well as another shot of cold air later this week. So that's the big plan for today's video, and I'm going to go super in depth with some of these snow totals. So I'm actually really going to go state by state in the Northeast. So if you're watching from the Northeast, definitely hang around to watch that kind of more in depth than I normally go in terms of specific places in the Northeast. But with all that said, let's go ahead and get right into it on this Monday afternoon. Taking a look at radar out there, you can see this is that one component of the storm, and then the other component of the storm is actually off the coastline here. So what's going to begin to happen here is where we have all of these kind of snow showers up here across the Midwest and interior sections of the Northeast. This low pressure here is going to phase with another low pressure here off the coast, and that is going to really allow this thing to crank up, deepen in millibars, become stronger, and bring some really big-time winds and some big-time snow for some of us in the Northeast over the next 24 to 48 hours. So taking a look at satellite right now, and let me loop this for you so you can actually see it a little bit better here. We've had, some really cloudy weather up into the Great Lakes and into the Northeast today because of this storm system, but you can see these two separate lows even better here on satellite. And again, these two are what are going to phase together or kind of combine energy to really help allow this thing to crank up and bring some big time weather to the Northeast. Other than that, though, we've had a relatively nice day here along the south. The clouds have been deteriorating here in the Carolinas where I am. So this morning in Charlotte, we started with really cold, kind of cloudy weather. But as the day has gone on and as this low pressure has begun to move away and up towards the Northeast, we've really begun to clear out here across the southern section of the country. Taking a look at temperatures out there this afternoon. Definitely a below average day with temperatures only really getting into the 50s and some 60s here in the southeast this afternoon. But those of us in Tennessee, Kentucky, we're stuck in the 30s today. So definitely a cold day for March standards. Up into the Northeast, we're kind of hovering in the 40s, but that will change as some of this snow begins to move in over the next couple of hours. And taking a look at some of those hazards here, we have a ton of freeze watches and warnings here across the south tonight as we expect those temperatures to get below freezing for many of us. So, if you started planning, I hate to tell you, you were definitely too soon, but definitely do what you can tonight to protect those crops. If you have anything out here in the southeast from Little Rock as far east as Raleigh tonight, and even as far south as Myrtle Beach, potentially seeing some of that frost accumulating in quotation marks on some of those plants. But looking up into the Northeast, this is where the big weather story is, of course, where we have some winter storm warnings from kind of Scranton, PA, up through Albany and back over towards sections of Massachusetts, southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, and even the southern tip here of Maine with winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories kind of surrounding some of those places. So taking a look at tonight, again, we're going to have to watch this freezing line creep back down towards the I-20 corridor, bringing below freezing temperatures, potentially as far south as Atlanta, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina, Birmingham, potentially getting below freezing, but especially here into the higher terrains tonight, I wouldn't be surprised to see some mid-20s in a place like Asheville, and maybe even teens in those really high peaks in the mountains there of North Carolina tonight, but definitely widespread below freezing temperatures for the lower 48 tonight. So, of course, protect any of those plants that you do have out. Going into tomorrow, we rebound somewhat nicely, although it really depends where you're at. And we'll likely get stuck into the 50s again, I'd say, here through much of the southeast. The northeast, it really depends on what kind of precipitation is falling from the sky. If you're below freezing and you're kind of in some of these higher terrains up here, getting some of that big-time snow, you'll be below freezing. But some of these coastal areas up into the northeast where we're likely just going to hold on to mainly rain, likely get up into the mid to upper 30s tomorrow. And, other than that, kind of find where you live on this map and you can see what you can expect for tomorrow. So now moving ahead and talking about this big nor'easter we've been tracking for a while now. I'll give you a quick overview, then we'll break this thing down. So really going into tonight, this nor'easter is going to begin to crank up along the coastline and begin to move inland. Otherwise, we really have this high pressure dominating the pattern over much of the lower 48, and that's helping to bring those below average temperatures for many of us tonight and even into tomorrow. You can see That nor'easter is getting going, and I'll break that down more here in a second, but just to touch on some of the other places here, really tomorrow looks like a really nice day in terms of precipitation at least. Wouldn't be surprised to see maybe some scattered showers out over towards the Oklahoma City, Dallas area, but really clear across the country other than this nor'easter here, and then a big time storm moving back into California tomorrow, helping to bring some flooding rains and mountain snow, which you folks in California, that's definitely nothing new for what you've seen so far this winter and the very beginning parts of spring. Going ahead and breaking down this nor'easter, though, we'll go ahead and do that now. So kind of right now, we've just got light snow and rain falling across much of the Northeast. Heavier rain here along the coastline from kind of Long Island over towards the Cape, where we're seeing some of those heavier rain bands move in. But further inland into some of these higher terrains, and then even further inland towards sections of New York State, we're seeing some light snowfall this evening. As we go into tonight, I do expect this rain-snow line to begin to crash a bit further south as those precipitation rates increase. So over here into western Mass and, even sections of Vermont, New Hampshire, as that heavier precipitation moves in tonight, we're going to see that rain change to snow for a lot of us. And by the time we get into kind of midnight, we got an all-out snowstorm, and we'll get really close to blizzard conditions tonight, here into western Massachusetts, southern New York, southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, seeing that heavy snow falling with that wind whipping tonight. As we get into tomorrow morning around sunrise, again, heavy snow falling for much of Massachusetts here, southern New Hampshire, southern Vermont, much of New York State seeing that heavy snow as well. A place like Boston, a really tough call, but right now it's looking like rain for tomorrow morning. Same for much of Rhode Island and back towards the Cape. A place like New York City, honestly, the biggest problem there is just kind of a lack of precipitation on the front end of the storm. We'll look at the rear end, and we'll see if we can maybe get some snow to wrap around on the backside here. But for much of tonight, I think that heavy snow will be confined here to this kind of circled area. Well, let me make that circle a little more visible. But this circled area here from southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, and western Massachusetts really cashing in on that heavy snow tonight. But as we get into tomorrow morning, this looks to kind of fill in with more precipitation on the backside, and that's when I think we have the best chance of some accumulating snow into New York City, northern New Jersey, back down towards Philadelphia if this precipitation can get that far south, and then even sections over here into kind of western Connecticut with this wraparound cold air and snow falling going into tomorrow afternoon. So I think tomorrow afternoon will definitely be the peak as a whole, but there'll be some of us still holding on to just rain here, I think, into the Cape even tomorrow afternoon. But as we move into tomorrow evening, this low pressure is really going to do kind of a circle. So the track of this thing is going to be kind of like this, like it's tying a shoe or something. And what that's going to do tomorrow is help to, again, bring the chance of maybe some of that snow getting as far south as New York City with some of these snow bands, maybe even Philadelphia, much of New Jersey. But what it's also going to do as this moves inland, we're going to get this dry slot to likely set up as well as warmer air. So if there's anybody that's really going to get robbed from this system in terms of snow, I think it's a place like Boston, Rhode Island, and the Cape, that kind of circled area. If I'm in that area and I want to see snow, my hopes are not very high right now. But kind of these other places that are going to get some of that wraparound moisture definitely could get a nice quick coating of snow out of this thing. But nonetheless, while this thing's kind of just meandering inland and beginning to kind of weaken with just some lighter snow around going into tomorrow evening, the winds are still going to be whipping. So any snow that falls and sticks into this kind of area here, it's going to be blown around, and it's just going to be kind of really blizzardy-like conditions through this kind of circled area here. I think it has the best chance of seeing that tomorrow. Luckily, as we get into tomorrow overnight, this thing finally begins to pull away, and that's whenever those folks into Boston, into Rhode Island, and coastal Massachusetts finally get their chance of some snow, with some of these back-end snow squalls feeding in off of the Atlantic into the overnight Tuesday and into Wednesday morning. And that could drop a quick couple inches of snow because those will be heavy rates for sure. And then by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, we have much clearer weather here in New England, although still windy and some scattered snow squalls around. So showing you those wind gusts now, pretty quiet right now, but you can see as we get into tonight and especially into tomorrow, those winds are going to pick up here, especially in the coastal areas of New England. And let me change the color of this pin so you can see it a little bit better here, but especially here in the coastal areas of the Northeast, seeing those winds pick up. Here into the Cape, I wouldn't be surprised to see hurricane force wind gusts when things are all said and done, and you can see that with those winds really peaking going into tomorrow afternoon. Just offshore in Massachusetts, we're going to be looking at 85, maybe 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts picking up here. But here along the coast, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts definitely bringing some coastal flooding issues here into the Boston area. Wouldn't be surprised to see that, especially a little bit north of there into kind of this inlet here that is formed by the coastline there. But really throughout all of the Northeast, very gusty winds tomorrow in the order of 30 to 45 miles an hour, very widespread. And that continues, as you can see, even through Tuesday night, those winds continuing to peak near 50 miles an hour for much of us in New England. And then that even continues into Wednesday, although finally beginning to die down, although still a very breezy day Wednesday afternoon here. And then after that, we'll definitely begin to lighten those winds going into Thursday. So talking about snow totals now, what I'm going to show you here is the National Weather Service forecast. So this isn't a model I'm showing you. This is what your local National Weather Service office is predicting. And I want you to go easy on them because I know you'll see these kind of exact numbers here in different towns, but this is kind of a ballpark estimate. And again, this is a very tough forecast. So a lot of these are going to be very wrong. I'll just tell you, somebody's going to way overperform and somebody's going to way underperform. And that's just the way these Nor'easters go. As I'm sure many of you who live in the Northeast know, you got to go kind of easy on your meteorologist with this or with these setups in general. So we'll start with Pennsylvania here. The real bullseye in Pennsylvania is definitely going to be up here into northeastern Pennsylvania towards Scranton, Hazleton, and that kind of area from Allentown northbound here along this kind of corridor from Pittsburgh back towards State College and over towards the Allentown area. But again, especially up here towards Scranton, where we'll likely see the most snow here, maybe above half a foot. So I think 6 to 12 inches is probably a pretty likely safe bet there through the Scranton area, and especially areas northeast of there, closer to the New York state line there. Place like Philly here, it's a tough forecast, I'll tell you, because again, I think some of that wraparound moisture could get you something, but it looks really like a dusting to about an inch here for much of Philadelphia from the storm system over the next kind of 24 to 48 hours. Moving this further up into New York State, you can see some of these numbers are pretty high here, especially down here towards the Albany area, back towards areas a bit further south here, closer to New York City. But I think this general area here from Binghamton over towards Albany and just kind of that circled area there are really going to be a bullseye with this storm, likely seeing above a foot of snow for a lot of us here, and some of us getting over 16 inches. National Weather Service office even has some areas getting above 2 feet of snow here. So maybe if there's some terrain enhancements there, so if you're living in higher terrain out into this general area, you could really get quite the doozy out of this thing. Areas further south, it's a pretty thin cutoff, and I'll show you that in the next map. But looking further here into upstate New York, kind of find your town to get a general idea here of what to expect. But Syracuse, I think 6 to 12 inches is a pretty safe bet. Same for Utica and kind of areas here in this kind of part of central New York State. So moving this now down to more of the coastal areas where it's really going to be really a tough forecast here. And a lot of these are going to be very wrong. I'll just tell you ahead of time. But we're going to have a very close cutoff between where this rain snow line sets up. So New York City, your local National Weather Service office here is going with about a dusting. I think that could overperform a little bit with some of that back-end snow as we talked about. So I think a dusting upwards of an inch or two in New York City is possible, but definitely not a blockbuster storm there. Places further up I-95 here into Connecticut. I think Connecticut and Rhode Island are two states that are going to be really tough to forecast for this. I think up here into northwestern Connecticut and western Massachusetts here, we could get a lot of snow upwards past a foot, but a place like Hartford 2 to 4 inches is likely a more realistic scenario. And then coastal Connecticut here, more of a dusting. Same kind of general story for Rhode Island here. Northern Rhode Island up towards Providence, maybe half a foot, but down here just south of there, likely just a dusting or a couple of inches. So same general story here in Massachusetts. The Cape here, not much. Western Mass, especially up here into the higher terrains, more than a foot of snow likely. A place like Boston, again, a really tough forecast. If I had to put a number on Boston, I'd say 3 to 5. Your local National Weather Service office is going closer to 5 to 8 with their forecast, but we'll see how that kind of pans out there. Looking further up to our folks kind of here in rural New England, up here into Maine and the high country of Vermont and New Hampshire, you're going to get a really nice snowstorm out of this, especially here, I think, into southern Vermont and New Hampshire, kind of from Manchester up towards Portland into Maine, back towards, I'm going to say this is Rutland. Maybe that is wrong. If you're from Vermont, let me know the pronunciation there. But I always love to learn how to actually pronounce these places because my pronunciations are very bad. But in these places, really, I think 6 to 12 inches is kind of more of a conservative forecast. I wouldn't be surprised to see more than a foot in a lot of these places, especially the higher terrains. A lot of us getting more than 18 inches on those peaks there throughout Vermont and New Hampshire. And then up here towards Bangor, Maine, about half a foot of snow looks like a pretty safe bet when all things are said and done. So that's the snow, that's the nor'easter. Let's go ahead and talk about some of this cold air now, because that is another big story as well. So tomorrow, Wednesday, a pretty cold day for much of us into the east, especially the southeast, as that cold air settles in. But as we go further ahead in time into the middle of the week, we're likely going to get another storm system and another pretty sharp cold front here, bringing in cold air behind it. And by the time we get into this coming weekend, we're well below average for just about the entire lower 48. And this is close to 30 degrees below average for a lot of us here through the lower 48. So 20 to 30 degrees below average would not surprise me at all for many of us going into Sunday and Monday. And then as we go beyond that, this pattern really looks to lock in for a while before, hopefully eventually by the time we get into April, we can finally break this thing. But it looks to be below average for a pretty long time here into the future. Talking about that next storm system just a little bit here, it looks like we dry up. We have a pretty nice Wednesday and Thursday. It will, at least for most of us, a pretty nice Thursday, at least. By the time we get into Thursday, the storm system begins to ramp up, though, and it's going to have, again, a really big cold front with it, so maybe some severe weather on the south side of it. But the big story right now, I think, is going to be that cold air behind it. And then after that, again, that cold air settles in, and we got some question marks that some of our models here have been hinting at potentially another coastal storm at about a week or so out. And, we'll watch this, but it's far enough out that we're not going to really talk too much about it today, especially since we still have this nor'easter to get through. With all that said, though, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely consider hitting that like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. We've gained a ton of new subscribers over the past couple of days, so that is super cool. And, of course, I'm very thankful to all of you who have decided to kind of make that decision. But with all that said, hope you all have a great rest of your Monday, and I will see you all tomorrow.